That is the Prodigy, Spitfire, from the brand new album Always Outnumbered, Never Outgunned, in the shops next week, but you get to hear the whole thing a week in advance with a little help from Liam Howlett. Liam is here with me now. Spitfire, one of the amazing things when I first heard that track was just that even though this is, you know, this new album, new sound for the Prodigy, but there's something really distinctive about the way that you manipulate drums and everything, which just says this is the Prodigy. And it's almost as if, you know, like a drummer, if you were playing a drum kit, would have a signature drum sound, and somehow you have with the way that you manipulate sound. How is that? How does that come about?
I think it's just in me. Do you know what I mean? I think that track just screams what I'm about really right now. I don't know. It's violent, that track. Do you know what I mean? It just kind of wakes me up, you know. And I just think, I don't know. It's all about the attack for me. Do you know what I mean? It's about how the song attacks and how it bursts out of the speaker, and that's kind of something I push on most sort of Prodigy. Well, most Prodigy stuff has had that. Most of the singles, kind of Firestarter, and a good Prodigy record should kind of just burst out of a speaker and drop. You know, I'm not so good at mellow music.
Spitfire. Who says Spitfire in it? Where does that come from?
What, the lyric or just the actual vocal?
The actual vocal.
Vocal is Juliet Lewis.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's that many people asked me if it was Zach from Rage Against the Machine. Basically, I write the vocal, to the lyric, just to kind of. I didn't want the vocal to be the main element of this song. It had to be more about the music. So the vocal was just there to back up the balls of the tune, and basically, like, Juliet came over from LA to do Hot Ride, and I played her this tune, and I said, "You've never been on anything like this before, but check it out, it's going to be cool, and just try it out." And I got her into a different vocal kind of sound for her on that track. And yeah, it's kind of, I think the vocals are slightly less relevant than the actual music in this one. It's just the vocal just there to back up. It's like a sample just to back the music up, you know. It's opening kind of statement of intent for the album, fist in the air, you know.
Yeah, but in many ways, I mean, with all the vocals on the album, they're kind of just another part of your palette, as it were, and the way that you treat them. I mean, a lot of people are almost unrecognisable in the
totally,
tracks.
Absolutely.
The next track is Girls, which was the first taste we had of the album. Came out as a kind of 12-inch promo thing. It was an exposure big one on the show. We're going to go straight into it. We'll talk a bit more about this after you hear it. Girls, the Prodigy on Exposure XFM. That is Girls, the Prodigy on Exposure XFM, featuring the Ping Pong Bitches on vocals. Tell us a bit about them.
I've known those girls for about 5 years. Just I think it was Bobby Gillespie introduced me to them. He used to be friends with Emily, and he was telling me about them going back a few years now, and I remember seeing them live in some real trashy disco club, and just they got great character. Do you know what I mean? I think they're still out there on the kind of electro circuit, doing their thing and getting a record together. They're just insane. They're great. I love those girls. You know, they're just really good fun, and just they bring a certain I don't know. They brought a certain trashiness to the track that really made it work. I had basically like the sample in my head, which was from the 1984 Broken Glass track, "Style of the Street." Imagine how it would be, you know, that opening lyric.
Right.
And I actually started off thinking about that sample and the way I was going to use that sample on its own, and I hadn't actually started a song like that since back in the day, like of Outer Space, where I'd actually thought about a sample and kind of built the whole track around it. So it was kind of cool to start from that angle again, because I usually start with kind of drums and bass, and then basically like I finished the track, a rough layout of the track, just with that sample going through it, and I kind of thought, yeah, you know, it sounds a bit like a B-side right now, do you know what I mean? And I needed to kind of bring some other elements in, and then I kind of had the idea to just inject a bit more sort of trashiness into it, and just you know, sort of sleazy sexiness into the track. And the lyric was kind of done in kind of good humour, because the lyrics are kind of quite ironic when you actually think about it. You know, we have been around the world, we have earned money, do you know what I mean? So it's kind of a piss take on ourselves, really, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of going back to not taking ourselves too seriously, and just kind of that twisted kind of humour of just taking the piss a bit, you know?
Yeah.
That's what we like.
Yeah, so then you got them to sing it.
They basically, we rocked in the studio and just tried different. Basically, what my first idea was to kind of, every time the vocal sample come round, just to have a different style of vocal every time it come round. But that got a bit confusing, so I ended up just chopping the vocals around and just getting something that was just sort of going from Emily then to Louise, back and forth, and that seemed to work really well. And that was what we went with. The result was kind of exactly what I was after. It's kind of an old school kind of sound, you know, going back to kind of the Attack on Miami kind of electro, you know.
Yeah, and it's not. I mean, it's you know, the vocals have been recorded brand new. The line is from Hazel O'Connor. It's quite a different. All the different elements are quite interesting. Girls, when it came out as a 12-inch, was backed with Memphis Bells, which is the next track, and this features Princess Superstar. Though, you know, it took a lot of listens for me to work out that it could possibly be Princess Superstar. And it's only really yesterday I was listening to it again. I was thinking, yeah, well, maybe it is. So, I mean, again, did you think, right, I want somebody to do the vocals on this, and then you tell them what they were going to sing, or what happened?
She was it was quite unusual the way she happened, because basically, like, first of all, with this whole record, I didn't want this record to be like a whole collaboration album, and so I set out certain tracks on the record where I knew I was going to do three proper collaborations, which you'll hear, like was Juliet's track, which was Hot Ride, the Twisted track, and Mr. Gallagher's track at the end. Those were the main collaborations. A lot of these other vocals that are contributions are more like sound bites or samples, you know. I wasn't sort of going to go back into my record collection again and sort of sample other people's records. I wanted to try and create these things. So when I worked with Conchetta, who's Princess Superstar, she we started off by her just spinning loads of lyrics over the track, and I did explain to her that I just wanted her to just kind of, the end result would be just kind of one vocal that was just going to be chopped around, and she was happy to do that because she's very into the whole idea of kind of this cut and paste music, and kind of, you know, she does her own DJ thing, and yeah, it's kind of, we seem to have the same kind of head on our shoulders. And I actually just hooked up with her in New York when I was over there, when I was doing my press thing, and we sort of both said, yeah, there's room for a full-on collaboration later on, but for now this was kind of, I did what I wanted to do with it. The music's kind of like, I want the music to be the epitome of what comes out of a laptop, do you know what I mean? Just kind of that real cheap sound, do you know what I mean? Just really kind of like just a cheap laptop sound, do you know what I mean? And I didn't want to kind of polish it up too much, and so that's exactly what the tune was about, kind of bursting into the end of it with this huge kind of almost Gary Newman synths, which are massive, you know. And yeah, it's going to be interesting when we do this live. I think I'm going to completely change it for live, because it's quite a slow track. I think it's too slow for live, so we're going to mess around with that by the time we come back and do this track live in October.
Yeah, no, well, it's a treat. This is Memphis Bells, the Prodigy, on Exposure XFM. Memphis Bells, featuring a little bit of Princess Superstar. That is the Prodigy from the brand new album Always Outnumbered, Never Outgunned. Liam Howlett is here, actually sitting where Princess Superstar once sat a few years back when she came in on the show. Get Up, Get Off is the next track, and this, again, I mean, I was amazed when I first heard the album, because I didn't really pay too much attention to the guest vocalists and anything like that, and I kind of, people have said, oh, there's so and so's on there, so and so's on there, but the way it felt listening to it, you know, they were just kind of by the by, really. So I hate the fact that every time I'm going to mention a track, I'm going to mention the vocalist, but they are integral to it in another way. You've got Twister doing the rap, and you've got Shaheen Badar doing the kind of backing vocal sound. What was the idea with this, Get Up, Get Off? It was
New York meets London electro, kind of clashing with kind of the style of New York and London, really. And basically, I think my one regret with this song is I tried to get into the studio with Twister to kind of do it when I was in the same room as him. It's really important to do that. I think all the other collaborations, everyone was in. I was in the studio working with them. Twister was on tour, and he actually recorded it when he was on tour. He pulled a couple of days out, and it's just the whole idea of bringing sort of like the sound of the sort of English electro kind of punk sound to his vocal and making it work, you know. And I think that Shaheen, who's on the track, she appeared on Smack My Bitch Up. She I wanted to get her on the record just with the kind of continuity of that sound. And yeah, she was actually in India at the time, and so she wasn't in the studio either, which was a shame. But I still wanted to get her on the track, so I basically got hold of some old stuff she'd done and just tried to chop up and use from an old session she'd done from like a year before. I think she was gutted that she wasn't in the studio, and by the time she'd come back I'd already delivered the record, so it was a shame we didn't miss out. But yeah, I definitely worked with Shaheen again. She's got an amazing voice, really pure, kind of the pure sort of Indian voice. It's just beautiful, you know. I love it. Really, it works really well on Smack My Bitch Up, and that's the kind of way of thinking. We've used it more as a chant on this record. It's more kind of like a more like a sort of traditional kind of chant, you know.
Yeah, that's great. The Prodigy, Get Up, Get Off. Up, Get Off, that is The Prodigy from the new album Always Outnumbered, Never Outgunned. It's John Kennedy with you until 1. It's Exposure, it's 104.9 XFM, and it is another Exposure album playback. Liam Howlett is here talking us through it track by track, and the next track is Hot Ride, which has been a bit of a favourite over the last few weeks, featuring Juliette Lewis, who we already mentioned, but I did wonder whether that was a Flying Lizard sample near the beginning of the tracks. It sounds like it to me.
It's funny you should say that, but it's not. And basically it reminded me of it, actually. It's kind of that kind of 80s kind of trashy sort of electro claps kind of sound that just really worked in this song. But I did it first and I thought, it sounds like that. It sounds a bit like that old tune, but you know, I think it's good to kind of nod back.
Yeah,
it's good to nod back to things. I mean, if I blatantly steal something, I'll tell you about it, you know. But that was just kind of a nod back to kind of just the kind of 80s and that vibe, you know.
Yeah, well, it's just at the beginning anyway. I mean, did you approach this as a cover version, because it's kind of taking a bit of Jimmy Webb's Up and Away?
Definitely not a cover version.
Balloon.
I mean, I actually set out not to cover any songs in this record. I much prefer to steal something blatantly and kind of make it my own. I think that we had various issues with the Fifth Dimension people, just because they were trying to say it was a cover version. I'm like, well, no, it's actually not, because it's one vocal we've taken, and the rest of the vocals are our own. But basically, yeah, the idea was just to steal something that's just. With this record, I wanted to get back to kind of beat thievery, and just kind of the idea of just stealing things and not being afraid to kind of just take things from different areas and just mash them together. Do you know what I mean? And I think that I was in the studio with Juliette. This was the second track we'd done. The first track was a track called Good Morning, and that was kind of more traditional punk rock. We might put that on a film later on or something, but basically this one we went with because it was just a bit weird. And I was in the studio with her in London, and she mentioned the lyrics she'd been talking about for this track, about being in a balloon, sort of an escapism thing. It was something about that, and of course the way my head works, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna steal that old Fifth Dimension lyric and just see if we can get that working on it. And when I told her about the idea, she sort of frowned at me and said, "Oh, yeah, is that going to work?" I'm like, "Yeah, just trust me on this one. It's going to be cool." And just so we lifted the lyric, and it was just a really cheeky kind of sample in a way. It was just kind of up and away, my beautiful balloon. Now get out, I'll push you out. It's just kind of had that twisted humour, what I like, and it was kind of quite punk rock. Do you know what I mean? And I just. Once we put it down, it just seemed to work really well, and just it just made me smile, you know.
Yeah, definitely. How did you meet Juliette Lewis? How did she get involved in the Prodigy?
My friend was in LA. He went to see Juliette Lewis in the Licks, and he didn't know what it was. It was in the Viper Room, so he went along, and suddenly Juliette Lewis jumped on stage, and completely insane, and just singing like Patti Smith. And he phoned me up the next day saying he'd just seen an amazing gig and I should check her voice out, blah blah blah. And so I got the CD from a management company, and just was really excited about the vocal, really, just on that level. Just thought it would be just unexpected to kind of do something like that, and but also challenging people's views and who they think should be on a Prodigy record. I think it's always good to kind of, I like it when people go, "Oh, she's an actress, she shouldn't be on the record." Do you know what I mean? I like kind of stabbing back and going, well, there you go, it's a dope record for you then. Do you know what I mean? I like challenging people and kind of just the idea of who should and who shouldn't be on a Prodigy record. Sort of taking something completely out of a weird scenario and just squashing it together. But until when I got in the studio with it, it was obvious that she was just probably the perfect person to do collaboration with, just because she's got a similar head to what I've got on. She's just kind of, she likes to do things in a kind of untraditional way and just kind of twist people's heads up, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, her choices with her films are definitely not straight. She's not a starlet, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I'm a big fan of this track. I think it's great.
Yeah, it's a good track.
It's good as a show opener. I can tell you. This is Hot Ride, The Prodigy. Always outnumbered, never outgunned. Exposure, XFM. Hot Ride, The Prodigy, Exposure, 104.9 XFM, Juliette Lewis on the vocals, Liam Howlett on the music making. What do you call it, Liam? What do you call what you do? Beat fixing? What do you call it?
The beats.
What are you, a beat technician? Are you a musician?
Are you a
producer?
I don't know. I'll leave that up to the journalists, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A noise maker.
Yeah, that's good enough, isn't it? Wake Up Call is the next track on the album, and I understand that this was actually the first thing you wrote after Baby's Got a Temper.
Correct,
is that right?
That's correct.
So when did this get written?
Well, I think it was the first track I finished way back in probably March last year.
Right.
And the track was a direct message to myself about remembering what the Prodigy is about, remembering what do I do, what am I about, and just kind of going back to writing something that just as a message, like an alarm clock in my head saying wake up, remember what you're about. And just I like the idea of it being very simple and very kind of, it's quite old school actually, this track. It's quite kind of old school Prodigy. I mean, I did like 2 different versions. This version was the stripped down version, and Cool Keith actually approached me when he heard I was doing a new record, and he basically he was like, man, you got to get me on this record. And I was like, yeah, of course you're going to be on the record, you're like the 5th member of the band, and so he was always going to appear on this record. And just the idea of getting Keith to write a lyric that was basically in that vein of wake up, remember what it's about, just that as a message to myself, really, from the Baby's Got a Temper thing. It was definitely written with a definite amount of anger and energy from taking what I saw as a negative and putting it into something positive. Do you know what I mean? It's probably the perfect and obvious record to open a live Prodigy show with. And actually, we'll probably end up releasing the full rap version as the B-side of single 3, maybe, I don't know, because I think it's something people have got to hear as well,
Yeah, no, I want to hear that. So in effect, he came in the studio with you, laid down a full vocal.
We actually did 2 tracks. He did, because I was going to do a second part of Girls, which kind of was Girls Part 2, and so he did a rap about girls, and that didn't really, we couldn't really finish that off to the way it wasn't really right, do you know what I mean? So I kind of ditched that idea, and ended up with Wake Up. And basically, like I said, just using this version of the album just seemed to make more sense, just because it's a track we can play live. It's not a full vocal track, it's just got space for the music to breathe, and it's just got the kind of Prodigy, old school kind of Prodigy dopeness.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. This is Wake Up Call, The Prodigy, on Exposure, XFM. That is Action Radar, The Prodigy, on Exposure, 104.9 XFM, taken from the new album, Always Outnumbered, Never Outgunned, getting the Exposure album playback treatment tonight. Liam Howlett is here, talking us through it track by track. What can you tell us about that? I mean, it features this guy called Paul Jackson, who's a kind of new name to me. Tell us about Paul.
My 12-year-old daughter was at home with one of her friends. I can't remember what I was doing. Might have been in the bath or something. We just bought a stereo for her birthday, so she's pumping out all this crap. Do you know what I mean? Like all this pop shit from Now, and then suddenly this like really mad voice comes on. It's just really loud, so I'm shouting at her, turn it down, and she runs in with well, she didn't run into the bath, but she runs up to the door and knocks on the door, and she's like, "Oh no, this is my friend's dad," you know, and I will turn it down. I'll listen to it tomorrow. So basically, the next day I went to the CD and just had a listen over to it, and it was just, I don't know, I just felt this kind of, it was almost like an AC/DC or something, kind of metal voice from the 80s, and I thought it was just insane, you know, and I just kind of thought, all the way back then, it was probably 4 months before I finished the actual record, I thought, yeah, it'd be a good idea to kind of got a chat with this guy and kind of do something that's like, you know, bringing someone fresh to the table. You know, it's always good to kind of meet people like the Ping Pongs. No one knew who they were, and it was good to bring Paul to the table and kind of use someone that's never been heard before. So anyway, I picked Rachel up from school, I think, one day, and I jumped on this guy and said, you know, can you come into the studio and do a track with me? And he was excited about doing it. I think we messed around on 3 different tracks. It was originally on the chorus of the Twisted track, but because there wasn't much space, it wasn't enough for him to kind of spit out what he does. You know, it was too much of a limited part for him, and so that didn't really work. And I just put it on the shelf for a couple of months. And then I was actually mixing the album in Whitfield Street Studios in London, and I was so buzzing with ideas. I had lots of ideas still I had to do, and so I set up a writing room next door in the vocal booth. And I think in the last few days I've written the music to Action Radar, and really liked the kind of almost new wave punk rock, kind of electro, early kind of 80s kind of almost Joy Division kind of sound about it. Do you know what I mean? It kind of had a real bassline driven sort of very thin kind of electro drums, and just sort of I don't know, it just had a good sound about it. I just liked it, and I thought this is a perfect song for Paul, so I shipped it over to him, and he was thinking about lyrics and stuff, and then just told me about the idea, and came in and did it first off, and it was just really worked. I think Paul's got a really interesting way of working. He kind of layers his voice and works against his voice to create a really unusual sound, you know, and it's, yeah, I've seen him play live, and he's good, you know.
So what does he do live? I mean, he's got his own band?
Yeah, he's got his own band called Dirt Candy. It's just him and a guitarist and a drummer. It's a 3-piece.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty tight.
With some of these people, are they going to... I mean, you've talked about Prodigy live shows, and it's been in the press all about, hey, I mean, this album might be just Liam Howlett, but you're going to be back, and obviously you're playing in December, and it's everybody, etc., etc.
It's always been Liam Howlett. That kind of annoys me, do you know what I mean? It's like, people forget that, you know, I did always write the music. It's like, you know, Keith and Maxim didn't ever touch any of the computers, do you know what I mean? It's like...
You were the Prodigy.
And I still am, man.
Yeah, no,
you
but
know, and it's like the people's perception of the band, you know, is exactly the same. I mean, I think it's really important to say that the focus has to be on the music with this record. Do you know what I mean? It's, you know, we took the Keith Flint thing as far as we could go with it, you know, on releasing records, and I, as a producer, could not give any more energy into that scenario without it becoming unfresh. Do you know what I mean? Look at Baby's Got a Temper, you know. Now I've done that, and now I've got that out of my head, and now I'm in a better place. Now I can reapproach Keith and Maxim to record new tracks now, because now I've kind of come around in a full circle again. But at that point, when I started this record, I totally knew that it wasn't the right thing to do to use Keith and Maxim on this record. I wanted to get back the feeling of stealing a female vocal from here if I wanted. I wanted this record to be sexy, and Keith and Maxim just aren't sexy, okay? There you go.
Well, what I was going to say was, are any of these other collaborators going to come and ever play with you live,
Sure.
like Paul or Juliet or Cool Keith or maybe Liam, who will hear a bit later on?
Well, people have to wait and see. I think that I spoke to Juliet, and she's excited about playing live. It's something she really wants to do. I mean, obviously for her to come around the world with us is like completely, you know, ridiculous, really, and I'm sure she's busy doing her own stuff. But big key dates would be good to get her there. You know, if we did like festivals next year, I'm sure she'd come along, and America and stuff like that. So that'd be cool. As for the other
Brixton
artists,
in December. What?
I don't know. I'm not sure if she'll come over for that. I think she's busy. But what's really important now is for Liam, Keith and Maxim to make this album work on stage. That's the important thing. I'm not bothered about these other vocalists being on stage with us. It's kind of making the record work for us three, because we are still the Prodigy as a unit live, you know. And even though people are slightly confused, how's this record going to work out live? I think it's a really good challenge and really exciting to kind of have a record that's going to evolve. I mean, when we did the last record, it was like we played Firestarter exactly the same as it's on the record, and that's kind of pretty boring for us, you know. We got monotonous. I think also this will create an opportunity to kind of have different versions of the tracks, and maybe, I don't want to speak too soon, it could be an idea to kind of almost have like maybe like a remix, maybe not the whole album, but definitely remix half the album to have different versions, maybe in a year's time.
Medusa's Path, The Prodigy, on Exposure, XFM. It's always outnumbered, never outgunned, getting the Exposure album playback treatment. Liam Howlett's here. Phoenix is the next track, and this is what you would call a steal. A bit of beat thievery.
Absolutely.
Shocking blues, love buzz. A lot of people will know the Nirvana cover version of this song. Is this where you first heard the song?
No, it isn't actually. I was quite surprised, because I thought I was quite knowledgeable about Nirvana, but apparently not, you know. But I was out kind of in London, just, you know, the usual thing, diving in a few bars, and I just kept hearing this record. I don't know whether it was the same DJ. I just kept hearing this record, the original, over and over again, and it was like the voice is kind of just really actually spooky to me. Do you know what I mean? It was really kind of freaky, and then later found out that it was this band Shocking Blue, and my friend was DJing, and I thought it was a good idea to totally separate to Prodigy, to kind of just take the track and rock a beat over it and just say, yo, you know, there's the bootleg for that track, you know, with pumped up drums, this just, you know, there you go, you can play it, you know. And so it initially wasn't actually written to be on the album, and then I kind of, as I started writing the record, I kind of thought it's more suitable for this record now, just because of the cut and paste nature of this album. Actually really feels right, and not being afraid to kind of steal the whole record. You know, it's effectively a remix, really. Do you know what I mean? And it's but who cares? I'm not afraid of that. It's a good track.
Yeah, no, it's great.
It's got it just, the vocals just I think we actually tried to re-record the vocals, and we just couldn't capture that old kind of feel, and so in the end I just said, yeah, that's fine, let's just jack the whole track and rock a beat over it. And sometimes it's as simple as that, and on this one it was, you know.
This is it, Phoenix, The Prodigy, on Exposure, XFM. That's Phoenix, The Prodigy, from the new album Always Outnumbered, Never Outgunned, getting the Exposure album playback treatment tonight. Just 3 tracks left. You'll Be Under My Wheels is the next track, and the rock and roll thing, that's the refrain that's going through it. Who's that then? That
is Cool Keith.
Right. From the session that you were referring to earlier, when you worked on different tracks? Or was
he actually did this for me from the Fat of the Land session.
Right.
And it was something we'd used in a live show quite a bit, do you know what I mean? And so it was kind of one for the fans, really, you know, that sample. This track is probably kind of, it's quite a DJ track, this track, you know. It's not kind of commercial, it's for the speakers, you know. This one's for the low end, really, and you know, for the bass. And yeah, it's quite a, almost like a Timbaland type of inspired beat, you know, just pushing it in a different direction. And yeah, it was quite early on, actually. I wrote this track. It was probably this was actually one of the few tracks I wrote in Essex in my weird stage, you know, when I was kind of very kind of, in like a weird kind of headspace and a bit of writer's block. And I think it's quite a sparse track, but I kind of listened to it, and I liked the idea of, you know, Prodigy usually isn't sparse. I kind of cram loads of noise in, and I like the idea of this track being quite kind of empty, you know. It's quite different.
Yeah. This is it. You'll Be Under My Wheels, The Prodigy. You'll Be Under My Wheels, The Prodigy. One for the speakers, one for the low end, one for the fans. So many people you're catering to. That is from the new album, Always Outnumbered, Never Outgunned. Liam Howlett is here. You're listening to Exposure. It's XFM. And the way it is the next track. And you were talking about beat thievery earlier on. And this steals rather blatantly from Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Yeah.
How much of a problem is that just to get this released?
Not a problem for me. It was a weird one. I first of all, I wanted to take the most famous, probably the most famous track of the 80s, and just tear the arse out of it, just screw it up in a ball and spit it back out again. I mean, it was quite punk rock in its intent. You know what I mean? I think that the initial idea would have been to kind of put guitars on it and kind of make it more abrasive, but I think that would have been a bit obvious. Do you know what I mean? So I kind of just wanted to take it the other way and spit it out as something kind of pre-house, because everyone knows I hate house music. So it's a finger up at house music, going, well, this is something that's kind of, its roots are deeper in kind of funk and kind of the Gap Band or the Fatback Bands, that kind of sound, Tom Tom Club or something like that, and just kind of just screwed up in a ball and spat out with kind of no respect to the original artist. But I mean, I went to meet. I had a meeting with the guy who wrote for Rod Templeton. His name is. He's an English guy. He was in that band Heatwave. Really nice guy. Quite a bizarre meeting. I sat in his penthouse and he was like, "Why do you want to use sample?" I was like, "Well, I'm all about nostalgia, and I'm all about it's important to me to kind of capture people's imaginations who are around in my generation, and that's what I'm about, kind of the nostalgia and the kind of the thievery of the whole thing." And he was like, "Well, why don't we go into the studio? We could record something different, And I was like, just tried to explain to him that that's not what the vibe was about. It's about me using the original, taking it and just mashing it up, And that's how the track got born. I actually wrote.
Did he understand that? I mean,
he understood it. Yeah. I mean, he knew what's going on, and basically, originally this track was going to have lyrics on it, but I tried. I think Prince's Superstar actually did a full vocal on this track, but it worked better as an instrumental just because it had more space and just kind of had more attention towards the music, really. But I wrote the first half of this track in Essex, actually, in my studio, just before I locked the door on a Red Bull and vodka night, and it came together very quickly, actually, and then I came back to it 4 months later because I knew I wanted to develop from the middle of the track towards the end. It kind of picks up pace, and at the time I wasn't really in the right headspace to kind of carry on in my studio, so I knew I was always going to come back to that part. So that part was probably written a few months later on, down the line.
Yeah. So you didn't have to have meetings with Michael and Quincy Jones, then?
No.
No.
No. I don't think they'd like me.
Well, I can't see how they couldn't like this track. I think it's great. This is The Way It Is, The Prodigy, with a little help from Michael Jackson. Just maybe, just a little bit. Exposure, 104.9 XFM. You've been listening to the whole of the brand new album from The Prodigy, Always Outnumbered, Never Outgunned. It's in the shops next week. Liam Howlett has been here with us, talking us through it track by track. There's just one more to go, which is Shoots Down, and features, would we call him your brother-in-law? Is that what would we call him these days?
Oh, please, it's so naff, isn't it? For God's sake.
Liam Gallagher's on the vocals on this. You've been planning this track, this collaboration, for some time?
Oh, at least 20 years.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, basically, like, I met Liam about 6 years ago in, I can't remember what festival it was. I think it might have been Nebworth, their own gig or something. And I think his brother had just done a track, The Chemical Brothers, and Liam kept going on about Poison, the track I'd done on the second album. And basically he was like, we should do a track to blow that Chemical Brothers track out of the water. I think it was just one of the Liam's kind of things he said when he was drunk. I don't think he was even serious about it. It was just like, it was just one of a Liam-ism,
Yeah, yeah.
And eventually ended up through sort of family connections, I guess, ended up in my house, drunk one night, and it happened the way I think collaboration should happen. It was just two people in the studio wanting to be in the studio because the vibe was good, and it's just all created around a vibe, really. I had a track I'd already written just with this guitar loop on it, and Liam grabbed a mic, and I remember recording it and not plugging the equipment in right, and I actually recorded the vocals onto the tape with the music. So when I listened back to it the next day, we were going, yeah, that bit's good, but I couldn't separate them because I'd already recorded them on the same two tracks. So we had to basically just vibe off of that session and just recreate the vocals again. But Liam's professional; he does it in the first take, so there's no fear with that. Do you know what I mean? And we basically wanted to do something that was kind of, I didn't want to make a dance record. That's one thing I've got to say. I wanted to make a record that was kind of more kind of abrasive and more kind of old sounding, I guess. We didn't want to make it electronic, this track. I wanted to make something that was kind of very simple and also more punk rock than what they do, you know, with their band. I think that it was really important to kind of get that across and not write a record that was kind of chorus verse, you know. Just write something that just was fist in the air attitude, and just I love the beginning of the track. It's got kind of a real music box kind of 1960s feel about it, you know, the piano right at the start.
Where's that? Did you write that?
That actually came from and inspired from a 1960s track called it's by a band called Sagittarius,
right?
And just the guitars as well, just basically recorded very cheaply, very sort of garage rock kind of feel, and yeah, we're just really happy with the track and patted ourselves on the back when we finished it, and just it was exactly what we wanted to do. It really worked.
Yeah, it was a treat. I think the whole album's great. I really do. It's
Thank you
been
very
a
much.
pleasure being able to play it on the radio tonight. Liam, thanks a lot for coming in. This is Shoot Down, the Prodigy on Exposure XFM.